Two Irish lads are strolling down a street in Liverpool, England, when they spot a shop window that reads, "Suits £10, jackets £7.50, trousers and dresses £5." One turns to the other and says, "Would you look at those prices? We could buy a boatload, haul it back to Ireland, and make a fortune, double, maybe even treble the money." The other lad says, "That's a grand idea, but do you think they'll sell to us if they know we're Irish?" The first lad grins and says, "Don't worry, I've got this," and walks in, putting on his finest English accent. "Good afternoon. I'd like 20 suits, 30 jackets, 50 pairs of trousers, and 25 dresses, please." The shop assistant squints and says, "You're Irish, aren't you?" The lad replies, "Ah, how'd you guess?" The assistant smiles and says, "This is a dry cleaner's." "Doctor, I've got some good news and some bad news. What would you rather hear first?" Patient: "Gee, I don't know. Give me the good news first, I guess." Doctor: "The operation was 100% successful." Patient: "That's great news. So, what's the bad news?" Doctor: "We amputated the wrong leg." Sam: "Hey, Dave, I saw something really weird last night in the woods." Dave: "Oh yeah? What did you see?" Sam: "Well, it's kinda hard to explain, except it looked like a group of older women gathered around a fire doing these weird chants and they started to get naked. I mean, that could only mean one thing." Dave: "Witches." Sam: "Exactly." A beautiful woman is driving down an old country road when her car breaks down. She sees an old farmhouse in the distance and walks to it seeking help. She meets with the farmer who says he would be happy to assist, but since it's Sunday, the mechanic will be closed. He tells her she's welcome to stay in the spare room for the night, but she has to keep away from his sons. The sons are both strong and tan from working the fields, and they are both handsome, too. That night, the lady thinks, "What the hell?" So she sneaks into the brothers' room and asks them if they want to "You bet," they say. So she says they can do all the freaky shit as long as they wear condoms. "Well, what's a condom?" "It's a special bag you put around your dick so I don't get pregnant," she explains. So the brothers put on the condoms and all three of them have a night of complete debauchery. The next day, the farmer calls the mechanic, the lady gets her car fixed and leaves. 15 years later, the brothers have had a few drinks and are reminiscing. "Hey, you remember that time we did the freaky shit with that city girl?" "Yup, sure do." "Do you care if she gets pregnant?" "Nope." "Then let's take these damn things off." A nun was taking a bath when there was a knock at the door. "Who is it?" she asked. The voice back replies, "It's the blind man. Can I come in?" The nun thinks for a moment and says, "Yes, that's fine." The door opens and the man says, "Nice tip. Where you want me to hang the blinds?" The nun teaching Sunday school was speaking to her class one morning, and she asked the question, "When you die and go to heaven, which part of your body goes first?" Susie raised her hand and said, "I think it's your hands." "Why do you think it's your hands, Susie?" Susie replied, "Because when you pray, you hold your hands together in front of you, and God just takes your hands first." "What a wonderful answer," the nun said. Johnny raised his hand and said, "Sister, I think it's your feet." The nun looked at him with the strangest look on her face. "Now, Johnny, why do you think it would be your feet?" Johnny said, "Well, I walked into Mommy and Daddy's bedroom the other night. Mommy had her legs straight up in the air and she was saying, 'Oh God, I'm coming.' I gotta tell you, if Dad hadn't pinned her down, we'd have lost her." Two nuns stand by the road holding a sign. "The way you've taken is wrong. Stop and turn back now before it's too late." The next busy driver who looks at the inscription shows a sparse finger and disappears behind the curve. A second later, a loud crash is heard. One of the nuns thoughtfully says, Sister, shall we just write, "Attention, the bridge is demolished"? The boss started to notice that one of his employees, Dave, started gaining lots of female attention. So one day, he asks Dave about his secret. Dave replies, "Well, before sex, I simply whip out my willy and smack it against the bedside table like a hammer. It numbs it up and makes me last longer." Later that day, the boss gets home to his wife and finds her in the shower, a welcome opportunity for sex. So he quickly undresses and starts banging his dick against the dresser just before hearing his wife calling from the shower. "Dave, is that you?" A wife decides to take her husband, Johnny, to a club for his birthday. They arrive at the club and the doorman says, "Hey, Johnny, how you doing?" His wife is puzzled and asks if he's been to this club before. "Oh no," says Johnny. "He's on my bowling team." When they are seated, a waitress asks Johnny if he'd like his usual and brings over a Budweiser. His wife is becoming increasingly uncomfortable and says, "How did she know that you drink Budweiser?" "She's in the ladies' bowling league, honey." We share lanes with them. A stripper then comes over to their table, throws her arms around Johnny and says, "Hi, Johnny. Want your usual table dance, big boy?" Johnny's wife, now furious, grabs her purse and storms out of the club. Johnny follows and spots her getting into a cab. Before she can slam the door, he jumps in beside her. He tries desperately to explain how the stripper must have mistaken him for someone else, but his wife is having none of it. She is screaming at him at the top of her lungs, calling him every name in the book. The cabbie turns his head and says, "Looks like you picked up a real bitch tonight, Johnny." The bartender storms in. "Hey! What's all the screaming about? You're scaring the customers." The drunk shouts, "I'm just sitting here on the toilet, and every time I flush, something grabs me and squeezes the life out of my test." The bartender opens the stall door, takes one look, and says, "You idiot! You're sitting on the mop bucket." Dave has just finished up work for the evening and is walking to his car. Suddenly, a short, rather squat-looking man appears in front of him with a gun in his hand. "Give me everything you've got." The man screeches at Dave. So Dave hands over his money and his wallet. As the man is about to leave, Dave stops him. "Say," he says to the robber, holding out his hat, "would you shoot a few bullets in my hat? I don't want my wife to think I spent all my money on booze and gambling." The robber also has a wife, so he agrees and shoots a few holes in Dave's hat. Taking off his coat, Dave then says, "Thanks, buddy. How about a few bullets in my coat while you're at it? I want to look like I put up a fight and I was not a coward." The robber sighs and shoots a few holes into Dave's coat. Then Dave says, "Just one more thing. Can you please shoot?" "Look, mister, I ain't got no more bullets," says the robber. "Oh," says Dave. "Then would you please give me everything you've got before I beat the out of you?" A man got on the bus with both of his front trouser pockets full of golf balls and sat down next to a beautiful blonde. The puzzled blonde kept looking at him and his bulging pockets. Finally, after many glances from her, he said, "It's golf balls!" The blonde continued to look at him for a very long time, thinking deeply about what he had said. Finally, unable to contain her curiosity any longer, she asked, "Does it hurt as much as tennis elbow?" A girl was a prostitute, but she didn't want her grandma to know. One day, the police raided a whole group of prostitutes at a party in a hotel, and the girl was among them. The police took them outside and had all the girls line up along the driveway when suddenly the girl's grandma came by and saw her granddaughter. Grandma asked, "Why are you standing in line here, dear?" Not willing to let her grandmother know the truth, the girl told her grandmother that the policemen were there passing out free oranges and she was just lining up for some. "Why, that's awfully nice of them. I think I'll get some for myself." and she proceeded to the back of the line. A policeman was going down the line asking for information from all of the girls. When he got to Grandma, he was bewildered and exclaimed, "Wow, still going at it at your age?" "How do you do it?" Grandma replied. "Oh, it's easy, dear. I just take my dentures out, rip the skin back, and suck them dry." Dave cannot make his wife come. He goes to the doctor and says, "Look, I just can't bring my wife to orgasm in bed. It's a real problem." The doctor says, "Well, is it too warm?" "Yes, it's absolutely sweltering." "Then get some aircon." "I can't afford aircon. I'm too poor." "Well, Dave, do you have a good mate?" "Yeah, I've got a mate, Francis." "Well, ask your mate Francis to stand over you and the missus with a towel, wafting you both to cool you down. That might help." So Dave asks Francis for this favor, who then agrees to help him. That night, Dave is in bed with his wife, pounding away with Francis, fanning them with the towel, but it's doing nothing for her. Dave says, "Well, this isn't working. Let's swap." So Dave takes the towel and starts wafting Francis, who is now shagging Dave's wife. Not long after, Dave's wife goes, "Ooh, oh, that's it. I'm about to come. I'm going to come." Dave shouts triumphantly, "You see, Francis? That's how you waft a towel." Dr. Billy had slept with one of his patients, and he felt guilty all day. He tried to put it out of his mind, but the guilt was eating him alive. Then a reassuring voice in his head whispered, "Billy, relax. You're not the first doctor to sleep with a patient, and you won't be the last. Let it go." But then another voice cut in, darker and sharper. Billy, you're a veterinarian." A woman goes to visit her husband in prison. Before leaving, she pulls a correction officer aside and says, "You really shouldn't work my husband so hard. He looks worn out." The officer chuckles. "Ma'am, your husband doesn't work. He eats, sleeps, and sits in his cell all day." The wife frowns and says, "That's strange. He told me he's been digging a tunnel for months." A pianist was hired to play background music for a movie. When it was completed, he asked when and where he could see the picture. The producer sheepishly confessed that it was actually a porno film and it was due out in a month. A month later, the musician went to a porno theater to see it. With his collar up and dark glasses on, he took a seat in the back row next to a couple who also seemed to be in disguise. The movie was even raunchier than he had feared, featuring Group X, SM, and even a dog. After a while, the embarrassed pianist turned to the couple and said, "I'm only here to listen to the music." "Yeah," replied the man. "We're only here to see our dog." This summer at Flathead Lake in Montana, a blonde, new to boating, just couldn't get her brand-new 22-foot bayliner to run properly. No matter how much power she gave it, the boat was sluggish and refused to plane. After an hour of frustration, she pulled into a marina for help. The staff checked everything. Engine fine, propeller correct, nothing seemed wrong. Finally, one of the guys jumped in the water to look underneath. Seconds later, he surfaced, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. Why? The boat was still strapped to the trailer. A mechanic was working on the cylinder head of a Harley motorcycle when he noticed a well-known heart surgeon standing nearby waiting for the service manager. The mechanic called out, "Hey, Doc, can I ask you something?" The surgeon, curious, walked over. The mechanic straightened up, wiped his hands on a rag, and said, "Look at this engine." "I open it up, take the valves out, fix them, put everything back together, and it runs like new. So why is it that I earn so little while you make the big bucks? Aren't we basically doing the same thing?" The surgeon smiled, leaned in, and softly replied, "Try doing it while the engine's running." A game show host turns to a rabbit contestant. "All right, here's your first question. What is 7 plus 5? 12, the rabbit replies confidently. "That's correct. Question 2. What is 56 minus 37? The rabbit thinks briefly. 19. Correct again. Now for the grand prize. What is 1,297 times 142? Without hesitation, the rabbit says 184,174. The host is stunned. Amazing! But how did you solve it so fast? The rabbit grins. Easy. If there's one thing we rabbits do well, it's multiply. An elderly couple was celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary. Childhood sweethearts, they had returned to their old neighborhood after retiring. Hand in hand, they visited their old school. The door was unlocked, so they stepped inside and found the desk they'd once shared. On it, Jerry had carved, "I love you, Sally." They smiled at the memory. On their way home, an armored car passed by, and a bag of money tumbled out, landing right at their feet. Sally quickly grabbed it. Unsure what to do, they brought it home. When they opened it, they were stunned. It held $50,000. "We need to return this," Jerry said firmly. "Finders keepers," Sally replied, stashing the bag in the attic. The next day, 2 police officers knocked on their door. "Excuse us, did you find a bag of money that fell out of an armored car yesterday?" one asked. Sally replied calmly, "No," but Jerry blurted, "She's lying. She hid it in the attic." Sally shot back, "Don't listen to him. He's losing his mind." The officers turned to Jerry. "Sir, can you explain what happened from the beginning?" Jerry nodded and said, "Well, when Sally and I were walking home from school yesterday..." The officers exchanged a glance, and one muttered to the other, "We're done here." Then they left. Bob, a hunter, went on camping trip with his wife, kids, and mother-in-law. One evening, while still deep in the forest, the missus awoke to find her mother gone. Rushing to her husband, she insisted on them both trying to find her mother. Bob picked up his rifle, took a swig of whiskey, and started to look for her. In a clearing not far from the camp, they came upon a chilling sight. The mother-in-law was backed up against a thick, impenetrable bush, and a large bear stood facing her. The wife cried, "What are we going to do?" "Nothing," said the hunter husband. "The bear got himself into this mess. Let him get himself out of it." A farmer ordered a high-tech milking machine. Since the equipment arrived when his wife was out of town, he decided to test it on himself first. So, he inserted his manhood into the equipment, turned on the switch, and everything else was automatic. Soon, he realized that the equipment provided him with much more pleasure than his wife did. When the fun was over, though, he quickly realized that he couldn't remove the instrument from his member. He read the manual but didn't find any useful information on how to disengage himself. He tried every button on the instrument, but still without success. Finally, he decided to call the supplier's customer service hotline with his cell phone. Thank God for cell phones. "Hello, I just bought a milking machine from your company. It works fantastic, but how do I remove it from the cow's udder?" "Don't worry," replied the customer service rep. "The machine will release automatically once it's collected 2 gallons. Have a nice day. The CIA, the FBI, and the NYPD are on a training exercise together. They are told to go into the woods and bring back a squirrel. The FBI goes first. They come back empty-handed. There were no roads or streetlights. Our shoes got dirty, and our suits got torn, so we gave up. Then the CIA go in. They come back empty-handed. We found a squirrel, but it was a low-grade one, so we turned it into an asset and are waiting for it to lead us to the top squirrel in the organization. Then the NYPD go in. 10 minutes later, they come out with a rabbit with 2 black eyes. I confess, I'm a squirrel." Dave was bragging to his boss one day. "You know, I know everyone there is to know. Just name someone, anyone, and I know them." Tired of his boasting, his boss called his bluff. "Okay, Dave, how about Tom Cruise?" "No dramas, boss. Tom and I are old friends, and I can prove it." So Dave and his boss fly out to Hollywood and knock on Tom Cruise's door, and Tom Cruise shouts, "Dave, what's happening?" "Great to see you. Come on in for a beer." Although impressed, Dave's boss is still skeptical. After they leave Cruise's house, he tells Dave that he thinks him knowing Cruise was just lucky. No, just name anyone else," Dave says. "President Obama," his boss quickly retorts. "Yup," Dave says. "Old buddies, let's fly out to Washington," and off they go. At the White House, Obama spots Dave on the tour and motions him and his boss over, saying, "Dave, what a surprise. I was just on my way to a meeting, but you and your friend come on in and let's have a beer first and catch up." Well, the boss is very shaken by now, but still not totally convinced. After they leave the White House grounds, he expresses his doubts to Dave, who again implores him to name anyone else. "Pope Francis," his boss replies. "Sure," says Dave. "I've known the Pope for years." So off they fly to Rome. Dave and his boss are assembled with the masses at the Vatican's St. Peter's Square when Dave says, "This will never work. I can't catch the Pope's eye among all these people. Tell you what, I know all the guards, so let me just go upstairs and I'll come out on the balcony with the Pope." He disappears into the crowd, headed towards the Vatican. Sure enough, half an hour later, Dave emerges with the Pope on the balcony, but by the time Dave returns, he finds that his boss has had a heart attack and is surrounded by paramedics. Making his way to his boss's side, Dave asks him, "What happened?" His boss looks up and says, "It was the final straw. You and the Pope came out onto the balcony, and the man next to me said, 'Who the is that on the balcony with Dave?'"